Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 18, better known as the season 1 finale of the mmjhl podcast. I'm your host, as I have been all season long, Graham the G Show Forsyth. This edition of the mmjhl podcast, as all season long is brought to you by Make Canada Fasteners and Tools. Be sure to check out their store locations in Brandon and Winnipeg today. They're your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. Also, be sure to check out their website at makecanadafasters.shop. We're also brought to you by Terraco, serving Manitoba producers for over 80 years in the agricultural industry. Be sure to check out their website at terraco.ca for more details on what they do. And to Goaltenders, your goalie's personal video review service. Be sure to check out their website at gordytumelsongoalies.ca for more information on their brand. Thank you to all three of those for supporting Manitoba major junior hockey league coverage here on the network all season long, as well as us in general here on G Show Productions on gshow.ca. But yeah, the mmjhl 2023-2024 season officially wrapped up 2 weeks ago at this point. The last game of the season was played on Sunday, April 14th, and with a chance to immortalize themselves, put themselves in mmjhl history as one of the teams to three-peat, the first to do it since a Charleswood Hawks squad did in the 2000s. The St. James Junior Canucks were up by a score of 3-1 in their final series against the Pembina Valley Twisters, with a chance to complete the three-peat after coming through winning a double overtime game 3-2 the night before. St. James was back on home ice at McDonald Arena with a chance to win a championship there for the first time since 1997-98. We start off 0-0 in this one in the first period, and it would be Ashton Romana coming down on a break as the puck got past the defenseman, beating Logan Ends, who got the start in this Game 5 matchup to open up the scoring 1-0. Cole Younger would add the third goal to make it 2-0 heading into the second. But to start off the second period, 2:29 in, Slade Southern with his fourth of the playoffs, assisted by Alex Van Dynes, stretching the Canucks out well there to cut the lead into only down 2-1. But the Canucks, Tyrone Willen, scoring his seventh of the playoffs on a wraparound chance, getting his rebound, and shortly after the Canucks on a power play, they continue to go to work with Rory Neal carrying the puck in, with a lot of time and space circling around a bit before going to Willen. He feeds it across to Griffin Height, and he would have his fourth of the postseason to give St. James the 4-1 lead, ultimately heading into the third and final period. But in the third, the Twisters pressuring Noah Gilbert, making the timely saves like he has all season long, really, and all throughout his career for this team, keeping it a 4-1 game. And then later on in the period, near the final moments to play, Tyrone Willen blocks a shot, takes it all the way down, and puts it in for his second of the game, eighth for the playoffs, fifth point in this championship matchup. And what a moment it was for St. James as they went and completed the three. And there you have it, the St. James Junior Canucks. What a moment. First team to three-peat since not the 2000s in terms of that era, but the 2010s era, when Charleswood started their run in that last three-peat. Being able to win from 2008-09 to 2011-12 was a four-peat for them. That's what St. James will be trying to do again next season, of course, losing some really key players. Tyrone Willen, Cale Price, Brady Whiteley, and Noah Gilbert among the most notable players that St. James is going to be losing. But what a run for them. The only loss in the playoffs this time around for St. James coming in the finals in Game 1 to Pembina Valley. This was a pretty close series overall in terms of how the games went down. It was just St. James too much for Pembina Valley in the end. And what a run it's been for St. James in terms of these last 3 years with the amount of losses they've had in the playoffs. Only 5, which is really dominant and speaks to how dominant this franchise, this organization has truly been. And yeah, as we take a look at the games, they lost 3-2, then won the next 2 games by a score of 3-2. Actually, winning that double overtime game, I said 3-2. They won it 4-3, and then of course winning 5-1. And I mean, greatness was completed this mmjhl season, and a big part of that greatness being achieved was the play of goaltender, the backbone of the St. James Junior Canucks, in Noah Gilbert. He joined me yesterday in a pre-recorded interview to talk about this championship season, the journey with the St. James Junior Canucks franchise. We get into how it came to be, as well how he ended up being a St. James Junior Canuck, and more on this edition of the MMJHL podcast with an MMJHL legend in Noah Gilbert, who has officially played his final game, being a 2002 born player, officially finishing his career off with a third straight championship, joining this edition of the podcast here on gshow.ca. Enjoy, everybody. It's head coach, it's number 30, Noah Gilbert, former goaltender now, I guess, of the St. James Junior Canucks, since he is officially aging out this year, being an 0-2, but ending it off in the greatest fashion possible. A three-peat for this Canucks team. Noah, I mean, this is something that was obviously being worked towards from the beginning of the season, even before it started, but to actually see the moment, see it completed, and to see your teammates rushing over to you, knowing that this team accomplished it, how special was it truly from your point of view on that championship Sunday in Game 5?
So obviously, 2 weeks out from that event, it's still pretty surreal, right? Um, the guys rushing over to me, like it was when that clock was ticking down, right? It's obviously a pretty cool moment, right? And to do it not once, not twice, but 3 times, right, is pretty cool, as some would say. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, this team becoming a part of history in the MMJHL is one of the teams to three-peat. It hasn't been done since the 2000s with, the Charles Wood Hawks doing it. But for this team, I mean, seemingly getting better every single season throughout these three-peats. Was 8-0 heading into this series in the finals against the Pembina Valley Twisters. Losing that first game, was it the wake-up call that this team truly did need to, be back on the top of their game?
So yeah, like within each of those 3 years, I found that we had one game in the playoffs where it was kind of like a kick in the butt, right? Like a wake up call, right? Like I know in our first year it was first game round two Raiders, we lose in overtime, right? And then we kind of found our groove again. Last year it was quite literally the first game of the playoffs. We're the first seed, we're playing the eighth seed, and in St. B, and we lose to St. B in game one. We didn't come prepared. Got a bit of a wake up call, and then kind of found our groove again until we played Transcona last year, who kind of gave us a really good fight. Like we didn't expect them to kind of beat River East last year, but they ended up upsetting River East in like 5 games last year, right? So that was another wake up call in game one last year, and then this year, funny enough, we might have only lost one game in the playoffs, but I kind of found this year to be like the toughest to kind of win, you know. So To get that wake up call from PV in game one, like we knew it wasn't going to be an easy series right from the start, right? Like we knew they were going to give us a bit of a push, right? That's a team that's beaten us twice this year, right? Once in our own barn too. So we knew that they were going to give us a pretty good push, and for us to bounce back from that in game one and have a couple more very tight games, right? Like I believe the first three games of that series were all 3-2, right? So to have like to have a team like give us a challenge like that really made that win at the end more special, you could say.
Oh, for sure. Battling through it third straight time to be able to do that, right? I mean, it was special to watch from a spectator's point of view, but I mean, I couldn't even imagine it being on that coaching staff, being on that roster, and what the vibes were truly like throughout this series. But yeah, I mean, this team, like you said, 8-0 heading into that final series. They obviously this being a tougher road, like you said, even though this team was winning eight straight games heading in. I guess that's what I guess comes with, the journey of trying to stay on top as much as this team did. What did you feel was so imperiled to this team? I guess being able to come in every single season and up the level of game that you boys were playing with.
Well, yeah, like you said, it was tough road, right? 8-0 and trying to stay on top, right? It's it's obviously just about like maintaining the confidence you've had from the previous years, right? Like obviously like the first year we won it, we were a pretty confident team. Like and I'm sure you've heard this like from many other guys that you've talked to from our team and like probably Blair as well, is that we're a tight knit group. That's not a lie. That's very true, right? We say that because it's very true, right?
Right.
Uh, we're so tight knit that like we 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 like to play for each other, right? We know what winning feels like, so we want to maintain it the best we can, right? So having that kind of winning mentality, right, definitely goes a long way for sure.
For yourself, you played 5 seasons, I guess 4 full seasons in the
Yeah.
MMJHL since, 2020, 2021 didn't even happen due to COVID-19. You post an 88, 16, and 5 record throughout your career with 8 total shutouts, just seemingly getting better and better each season, like this team seemingly did year in and year out. What do you credit that to? Do you credit it to just you growing as a player in the league, something you were doing off ice? How is Noah Gilbert able to truly, lock in better and better each and every year to elevate his game for the St. James team and be the backbone they needed?
Well, obviously, I've said this throughout the years. Obviously, it does very well help when your team can average 5.5 goals for a game, right? That definitely really gives me extra confidence in my team, right? And also, like when I need to step up, I know I'm confident in my team that they can kind of shut it down, like in the D zone when we're getting hemmed, or uh, put a puck in the net when we're down a goal, right? Uh, like I said before, confidence does go a long way, right? If I'm confident in my team, I'm hoping that they're confident in me, right? And then kind of grow off of that, right? Finding a rhythm, essentially, right? Um, and I know as for personally, like as a goalie coach, just getting more pucks each year, that's kind of like something that definitely helps you improve, like especially in the off season too. Like if you're not just sitting around, right? You're just getting pucks on the ice all the time, right? It definitely goes a long way for improving one's game for sure.
Obviously, you got to be satisfied with how your career ends up ending off, right? I mean, almost at 90 wins, 3 straight championships. But if 2020, 2021 plays out, we could be looking at you sitting at 100 wins. Do you look back at that and kind of disappointment sets in, or do you really care at the end of the day, knowing that, well, you got 3 straight championships? I'm good with not 100 wins.
Well, obviously, yeah, like at the time, you kind of well, here's the thing. It's like now that we're here, I'm obviously like satisfied with the three championships that we had. So there's no really for me personally, I don't really find looking back in the past as it doesn't really matter too much to me, right? Like we got the three championships in a row, which is pretty special as it is, and we did it with a really great group of guys for sure. So just very happy about that. That's all.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can't really complain, right? Something
No,
that hasn't been done since the 2000s, and yourself, Noah, being a huge part of it. And this team defensively has been really great throughout these past three seasons, and was pretty good throughout the playoffs. But in that game five, specifically, when this team had a lead and Pembina Valley is trying to push back, right? And we saw a lot of that in the third period, a lot of shots. You come up with a few crazy sequences where you're making three, four saves at a time. Is that just another example of Noah Gilbert coming through and being able to lock in the biggest moments? Do you feel like that was maybe one of the most special parts of your game, being able to rise to the occasion when the pressure was the highest?
well, I know personally when we get a lead like that in a big series clinching game, like I know in game four against Transcona, we score or it's like 2-2 the whole game or 2-1 the whole game, I think, right? And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't want this to go any longer than it has to, right? So I'll do my job as a goalie to shut it down, keep the puck out of the net best I can, right? Um, Same thing against Charleswood in game four, right? They scored early. They scored the first goal of the game. And then I think we kind of realized, okay, we're in a hockey game, guys. So we gotta pick it up here. And then we scored six in a row, right? So yeah, in that last game, I think another reason the boys kind of like stepped it up big in that game too is like we didn't really want to go back out to Morris, right? That's another bus drive we don't really want to have to make, right? So when we have opportunities like that, we gotta pounce on them, right? We gotta make sure that uh we gotta make sure that we don't blow it essentially, right? So yeah, just holding the fort essentially.
You just mentioned it that Arena and Morris, right? This team in game number four ends up going to double OT against Pembina Valley. Matthew Mason Vandell with such a clutch stick to lift that puck past Pembina Valley to put this team up 3-1 heading into game five. As a group, I feel like that's definitely a sigh of relief when you're able to win a game like that. But how truly huge was that in that point in time in the series, knowing that could be either tied 2-2 or we're up 3-1 if we win this game and we get it. Did you feel like that, I guess, further kind of established your guys' advantage in the series at that point?
So funny enough, I don't know if you followed us too much last year in the playoffs when we were playing Transcona, but we had a double overtime game that ended in 4-3, right? And there was a big goal scored by 2001 born player Zach Greenwood.
Yeah.
So it was funny in the locker room. We were kind of saying to each other before the second overtime started, we were like, God, we could really use a Zach Greenwood right around now, right? And then for Maddie to catch that puck down, have it a little ahead of him, and then chip it over Owen's shoulder there in overtime. That was a from my end. I was like, I don't know how that went in, but that was a pretty cool goal, honestly. And that it's funny because it was just surrounded, like place was packed, right? A lot of Morris fans, and we had our little section of Canucks fans over by where we actually scored the goal. And for the place to only erupt for Canucks fans was kind of funny, but pretty cool as well, right?
Yeah, and what a crazy goal that was, truly seeing it getting the fortuitous bounce for this
Yeah.
Canucks team. And Yeah, I mean, the next night finishing off at home in front of the home crowd, it was absolutely packed in that arena. So many people came out to support this Canucks team. You get to celebrate with your brothers, the ones you've been with from the very beginning at your start of this St. James Junior Canucks career for yourself, as well as the newer players that have been added on. We've already talked about the moment when it actually happened, but to lift the trophy, go up, receive the medal, celebrate with friends and family, doing it for the final time. Talk about the surreal aspect of that part.
Well, I don't know if I mentioned it from the start, but no, just to think back from like when we were 17, me, Brady, and Kale just joined the team, right? Uh, just to think back memories from all the way back from there, right? No, yeah, and like it was unfortunate that we didn't get a playoffs that year because it, like you said, it kind of makes you think, right? Like what could have been, right? But I guess that all doesn't really matter too much when you have the one, two, and three, right? So definitely a pretty cool way to go out for sure, and something that I'll obviously remember for the rest of my life for sure.
And it's funny, I actually interviewed you, Kale, and Brady during
Yeah.
that time, just after that season ended or into the next season. I forget exactly off the top of my head now, but it was around that time. And I remember asking you boys, why exactly St. James, right? If you have the talent to go play Junior A, why pick St. James? I forget exactly what you boys said, but something along the lines of the culture in St. James. Looking back at it, hindsight, obviously the right decision made for this trio.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Like so how I personally joined the Canucks. I know if you ever had the chance to talk to Brady and Kale, it would be probably different stories for them. But for me, it was so I was working on a golf course at Tuxedo Golf Course, just on the maintenance crew. So I'm sitting on like a fairway mower or something. Uh, I'm planning on going to Winkler that year. Like I was planning on playing there that season. I get a call from Justin Steves while I'm on the fairway mower, and he asks me, he's like, "So, do you have any plans for next year?" And I said, like, I'm probably gonna try Winkler, give that a go. And he's like, would you want to try out for the Canucks if that doesn't go well?" And I'm like, I mean, yeah, if Winkler doesn't work out, I would absolutely love to come out. And lo and behold, Winkler didn't really work out too well, right? I end up going back to St. James, the training camp, literally, I think a week or two after. And ever since then, it's been a pretty fun ride. That's for sure. Um, yeah, yeah, fun
Yeah.
ride. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a classic example of, if something doesn't work out, there's something that could come along the way and be potentially better. And I think the potential has been fully realized at this point that this ended up being the best possible decision for yourself and everyone that was a part of this, journey to getting three championships in a row. I'll end off with this, Noah. You're going to be done as a junior hockey player now. I'm sure you're going to be moving on to like other things you mentioned, goaltending, coaching, but just to realize that all this has happened to win three in a row, to be a part of history and be immortalized within MMJHL history. Got to be pretty special to look at it that way. Talk about, I guess, your thoughts of, I guess, being, engraved into MM history this way, being a huge part of this three-peat.
Well, like I said from the start of this podcast, it's obviously going to be something I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. It's a pretty special feeling, right? And most importantly, I wouldn't have done it with any other group of guys. It was like I said, fun ride along the way from my 17-year-old year up until I was 21, right? Uh, Meeting new guys, playing with some guys that I've played with all my life, right? Uh, to finish it off with three championships with the group of guys that I got to play with was like I said, pretty special, pretty awesome.
Well, it's been a special career to cover from the times I've been able to back a few years ago, and then coming into this year and covering the MMJHL again. What a team to watch and to be entertained by this season, finishing it off exactly how this team wanted to, like any team would in this position, winning three in a row for the final time this season. And in his career, Noah Gilbert has played his final game as a Canuck, but will be going down in Canucks history as probably the best goaltender, I'd say, for St. James that they've had. Noah, best of luck to everything outside of your junior hockey career. Going to be exciting to see where maybe you could take some things in coaching and stuff like that. But till we connect again in the future, maybe at some point, you enjoy, all the celebrations still and life after the MMJHL.
Thank you, Graham. I appreciate it very much, and thank you very much for having me on the finale podcast here. So appreciate it a lot.
Hey, we have to get the best goaltender in the MM on at some point this season, and happy we were able to do it, man. And hopefully the Jets can start to pull their heads out of their butt and get things.
I couldn't agree more, Graham. I couldn't agree more. They're giving me stress right now. That's for sure.
The vibes negative right now, honestly, for myself with this team, hoping they can pull it together, like St. James was able to throughout
Yeah.
these past three seasons. But yeah, enjoy the playoff hockey, man, and thanks for coming on once again.
No, absolutely. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Graham.
And great to be joined by Noah Gilbert, number 30 for the St. James Junior Canucks, and playoff dominance again for the Canucks, the highest scoring team and at times, they would get pressured in their own end, and there'd be a swarm of chances for, say, the Pemina Valley Twisters. Can't really say about the other series because I didn't watch it in person or any of that. But by the stats, there were games where they got outshot against the Transcon Railer Express, but they did a beautiful job on keeping teams to the outside. And when they broke down, Noah Gilbert was there to make the saves. The offense came through in great fashion for this team, and they lived off of the speed, played a physical brand of hockey, and no team was officially better than the St. James Junior Canucks. Congratulations to them. Going down in MMJHL history is one of the most impressive groups of all time, completing the three-peat for this class of 2024 for them. Their O2s aging out. What a end to a career it was for a player in Tyrone Willen and Kale Price as well, both over point per game in the playoffs. Tyrone Willen, that 5 point game in game 5 of the finals, ended up being enough for him to win playoff MVP as well. Just an insane career for himself. Rory Neal from the back end, putting in so many goals in these playoffs, as well as 1-3 behind him. But yeah, you look at that Kale Price on this list again too, right? And in terms of the assist leaders, well, no players better on St. James than Willen and Whiteley. Ruben, he's still so impressive. He finished second in assists, even though he only played 7 games. But goaltending wise, you need a great one to win a championship. And as already said about Noah Gilbert, all the great things he has. His final playoff run finished with 12 wins, only 1 loss, a 9.35 save percentage. No shutouts in there, but pretty darn dominant once again. Only a 209 goals against average, too. And in terms of all-time leaders in MMJHL history, if we take a look at it here, yeah, here we go. Not only did these players, this group of O2s, finish with a third straight championship, but as you can see there, Willen and Price both finishing top 5 in total points in MMJHL history. Now, I couldn't separate it regular season to playoffs, so this is from the beginning of time. Believe the first game, I didn't double check this, but they always play on the last Friday of September to start off the season. So I went back all the way to 2007, the earliest you could go all the way up until 2004 or 2024, that is. And as of the stats that have been registered, Tyrone Willen and Kale Price both finished top five all time. Willen also finishes top all time in assists with 202. Whiteley and Price right behind him there. Just incredible careers from these three players. On the Canucks, a huge part of their championship success, and as well as Noah Gilbert. With playoff wins in there, he's at 131 all time. No player had more than him. Only less than him. The closest being Hunter Plaze, of course, won a championship, the only one in Stonewall Jets history. 93 wins for himself, super impressive stuff, but no goaltender officially better than Noah Gilbert. Three straight championships, three chips in total, most wins of all time. A pretty darn good all-time save percentage at 920 or .920 there, and all-time shutout wins leader as well, or shutout leader as I should say. But yeah, four players there, and others from St. James aging out. We'll get into them later on and how they project heading into next season because they're still so loaded. But for Pembina Valley, this is a team that's losing quite a bit of top quality talent, but is bringing back some pretty good talent at that. A young team heading in to next season, a younger team at that compared to this year. Had a chance to sit down with their head coach yesterday, Braden Biernaerts, to talk about this season, the run this team went on after losing last year in the quarterfinals, what's ahead for this team, as well as a bit of his history of playing as a player in this league and what it's like transitioning from a player to coaching, as he was playing with Pembina Valley back in 2018-19 when that team knocked off St. James in the championship series. You're watching the mmjhl podcast. Braden Biernaerts, second year head coach of the Pembina Valley Twisters, joining the show next. Stick around, everybody. It's head coach of the Pembina Valley Twisters, Braden Biernaerts, joining this edition of the mmjhl podcast for the season one finale. Braden, we're weeks removed at this point from the game 5 that ended up clinching the third straight, the three-peat championship for the St. James Junior Canucks. This Pembina Valley Twisters team got off to a 1-0 series lead, but St. James just proven they were the toast of the league this season. But talk about how proud you were of this team, this Twisters team, of making it to the finals and even being able to beat the St. James team in one game.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great year for us. Just kind of how it unfolded and, starting with that 13 game win streak to go into kind of the new year and, just to see all the guys really get together in a tight group in there and to see where they go and to sweep all the way up to the finals. And like you said, to get at least one win against St. James, it was special. I mean, I think we could have had a few more in there, balances just didn't go our way, but all in all, a great season. And we didn't win it all, but you got to look at the positives of what came out of the year overall.
For sure. And I mean, if you take a look at those games in the finals, right up until the game 5 where St. James ends up opening it up, every game was won by only one goal. Battles throughout this series. And this is a team that ended up, going out in the quarterfinals last season in the first round. What did you see, I guess, from this year's team in terms of the improvements, taking the next steps to get to the highest level, which is the finals?
I think it just comes down to everybody buying in and doing their job and having fun when you're doing it. And I think my first year was last year, and I think the group, it was a good group, and we didn't change much, systems wise from 2 years. It was just all of everybody just kind of bought in, and it came to work and came to make something happen, and that's what that group did, and that group made it happen to get to the finals.
For yourself, you're actually a former Pembina Valley Twister, and I learned through joining along on the Pembina Valley Twisters broadcast since I ended up doing color for the game 5 that you were on that team that ended up beating St. James back in 2018-19. This These two teams have gone up against each other 3 times out of the last 4 finals played. Talk about how special it's been to be a part of this rivalry on the players' side of things and now on the coaches' side.
Yeah, I mean, when I played and we had a good go at St. James and, coaching against and, you know, being a player and then being a coach and then getting to the finals against that team, you're kind of wishing you could get out there and play again. And, it's so much fun. And, the league was great all year and, they were a good team and it was just, fun to play them again as a coach. And, it's too bad we didn't get them this time, but we're sure we'll try get them again next year.
For yourself, of course, in your second season only this year with the Pembina Valley Twisters as a coach, what's it been like so far? This experience of, like we already talked about, basically, it's a bit different as a player, but taking the things I guess you've learned as a player and into coaching, have you found that that's kind of been a part of the process? What's, I guess, the process truly been like throughout these past 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's lots of learning. As a player, you think you know it all till you kind of get behind the bench, and then you kind of realize there's a whole different world to it. And yeah, I know it's just exciting. You're always learning and always trying to go. And the thing for me is I'm not too far out of playing, and you can relate to what the players are going through, everything they're going through at school and, work and the whole process of it all. And then the whole program of how we're running things, exactly kind of what they're thinking and what they're seeing out there going through it as a player and kind of put the two and two together and try find the happy medium from the coach's side to the player's side and just kind of put that together.
This team this season, Pema Valley, was loaded with talent, no question about that. One of the big reasons why this team ends up going on one of the longest winning streaks this season, right? As you mentioned, 13 games, which is super impressive. But talk about, that moment where you started to see things truly start to click for this team in terms of them playing at their top level consistently.
Yeah, I think it goes back to when we first beat St. James in December, and we were down 3-0 in that game, and we came back and we finished that game 6-3, and that's the moment where it clicked for me. Like we got a hungry team here. I think our first year, if we got down, my first year coach, if we got down, I think we had no pushback. And this year to see that pushback start in December, that just because we're down three, it's we're not over. And that's the turning point for me. And that's I think that was the second or third game into our streak, and that I think that's what really got everyone mentally engaged to keep going and keep pushing and try to see how far we can reach.
Obviously a lot of disappointment anytime you lose, and we saw that on the faces, the emotions of all the Twisters players. Of course, some players playing in their final games, such as Jacob Carroll's, right, Merrick DeGrave, and others aging out on this year's team. But a lot of good young talent on this year's team that's coming back. Some good O3s coming back as well. Goaltending tandem could very well be intact again next season. I guess even though there is the disappointment this season, I guess there's a lot of optimism with how this group is built on things and knowing the returning players coming back next season.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing with, the program you hope you're building is everyone who walks in, those O2s, those guys, I coached a few of them in high school and to jump into it in this league and all those graduating players, they passed down a lot of experience. They made it to the finals twice now and they went through it for 4 years and you just try hope you build a good environment in that room that now the younger guys, the O4s, O3s, they take the reins and the new guys coming in, they all fall in line of that same kind of culture and, you know, wear that logo on your chest with pride and come ready for another good year.
What's going to be the, I guess, process in terms of the tryouts heading into next season? Any camps coming up before the tryouts? What's going to be the process in terms of, I guess, officially naming next year's Pembina Valley Twisters team, the 24-25 group?
Oh yeah, we'll just do our regular kind of recruiting over the summer and we just kind of have our fall camp that goes on for about a week and then we get into some exhibition games, some inter squad games and yeah, nothing too crazy, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited to get going for next year already. I don't like being away from the rink too long.
Yeah, For sure. It is almost May at this point, but of course, time could either go slowly until the start of this upcoming season, or time could fly by fast. And before we know it, we're back at the rink watching teams and covering teams like the Pembina Valley Twisters. Their head coach, Braden Biernaert's joining the final edition of the season one podcast of the MMJHL podcast. Braden, been exciting all season long to watch this Pembina Valley Twisters team. Tough to see them come up short, but looking forward to what Pembina Valley has in store next season. Thanks for coming on the show for this finale.
Yep, thank you. Thanks for your exposure on the league. Love it.
And Braden Biernaert's joining this edition of the mmjhl podcast, brought to you by McCann Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders, as you saw there on screen. Just taking a look at the statistics for the regular season for one final time here in the finale for the first time in this episode specifically, but gone over the stats quite a bit episode by episode all season long. I do it for one final time. So goaltenders, no goaltender had more wins than Noah Gilbert, guest on tonight's episode. No goaltender had a better save percentage than Owen Larocque, but played way less games in the regular season compared to a goaltender in Noah Gilbert, who was only 0.2 off of him, or 0.02 off of him, as I should say, to be more accurate. But as for shutouts, even though Gilbert didn't have any in the postseason, he finished tied for the most with Michael O'Sullivan, who played way less games than Gilbert, almost less than half of his games at that, as I should say. In terms of the points leaders, Tyrone Willen for the second season in a row, leading all players in points, having 88 compared to the second most, who was registered by Peyton Bateman, who's going to be a returning forward for the Stonewall Jets next season with 73 in 40 games played. Rylan Huging, he'll be returning next season for the Charleswood Hawks, at least he's projected to. Rounds out the top five here at 69 in 42 games. Speaking of Huging, no player had more goals than him. He played 2 more games than Rubini and also had 2 more goals at 36 compared to Rubini's 34. Willen also on this list, tied in the top 3 with Nate Goodbranson. Carson King also makes this list for the Stonewall Jets. And as for the assist leaders, no player had more than Tyrone Willen. Dean Gorchinski, though, was right there. Gorchinski will be a returning player, eligible to return next season for the Fort Garry Twins, as they'll actually be having quite a few returning players to their lineup. Quite a impressive squad that they could be bringing back. I'm going to be getting into their projections as well as all the rest of the 10 teams in the MMJHL for the upcoming 2024-2025 season as we look ahead to then. Here, still in 2023-2024, and it's the season 1 finale of the MMJHL podcast for episode 18 here on gshow.ca on our G Show Productions YouTube channel, presented by Terrico, McCann Fasteners and Tools, and Goaltenders. Stick around, everybody. Welcome back to the MMJHL podcast. We're almost near the end here, everybody. Before that, though, we got some business to take care of, talking about all 10 teams as they head into next season. Now, some of these players might not even be coming back to these teams. They could decide to go a different route next year. Maybe they don't play hockey altogether. But this is what is projected in terms of who's eligible to come back based off of the date of birth of these players. No 2002s can come back. They have aged out this season. The oldest age group is going to be 2003s next season. And as we take a look at how the regular season went this year in the MMJHL, there were, of course, as always, 2 teams that missed the playoffs, and those were the Stonewall Jets and the River East Royal Knights. The teams that made it in to the playoffs, well, that was that missed last year, the Raiders Junior Hockey Club making it back, and Stonewall also missed the season before, so they'll be plotting to get back to there for sure come next season in 2024-2025. But we'll start off with the defending champs, the three-time defending champs at this point in the St. James Junior Canucks. No doubt looking to add on championship number 5 in their franchise's history next season, their 4th in this decade. And I'd say that it's going to be the toughest path they've had so far. They'll still be in the running to win it, but no doubt losing some really key players in Tyrone Woolen, Cale Price, Mason Vandell, and Sobey up front, Borthistle, and more importantly, Brady Whiteley on the back end. And another really important piece, as already mentioned, Noah Gilbert will be aging out in their crease. No matter what happens this season, the dynasty has already been cemented, and yeah, like I said, the path is going to be tough. They're losing a back-to-back scoring champ and playoff MVP in Tyrone Woolen, who also led the playoffs in points. You're losing your team captain, Cale Price, an all-time leading defensive scorer in Brady Whiteley, the greatest goaltender of all time by the stats, in Noah Gilbert, and by the resume. So those are some really big pieces that you're missing that have been so instrumental to this team's championship success. You're also losing a fantastic offensive talent like we saw in the playoffs, and a good 200-foot player in Mason Vandell, and Chase Sobey, who came in, played really well for this team after they acquired them, or they acquired Sobey at the trade deadline, plugging him in on their penalty kill and in their bottom six and having great success. So they're losing quite a few bit of key pieces, but they're still going to have the best player in the league, in my opinion, in Rory Neal next season, a 29-goal scorer coming back in Griffin Height, and a 20-goal scorer also coming back in Ashton Romanek, who had 5 in the playoffs. Payson Butler, who you brought in trade, didn't have as big of a role as I thought he would in the playoffs for this team, but he should be stepping up into a bigger role again next season. Connor Murphy and their goaltending is going to be my biggest question. They still have a lot of good pieces coming back on the D, and they still have a lot of talent up front. But when things broke down for the St. James Junior Canucks team, and it did quite a bit against the Pembina Valley Twisters in that final series, Gilbert was there to make the key saves in the key moments. Connor Murphy had a fantastic record this season, but was it more so he was playing weaker opponents and the team in front of him was just playing so strong, or is he really for real? I can't wait to see next season. It's some huge shoes to fill, and honestly, it's almost impossible to fill these shoes, right? Because these are all-time great players that players are going to have to be stepping up into their roles to try to supplement for their losses. But I mean, St. James, even if a 4th straight championship isn't in the works, this is a team that I think will be most likely in the championship contending conversation again next year. They have a really nice roster heading into next season. Still, with the losses that they have in these big guns, you knew it was going to come eventually. This is the year, and you still got, I'd say, the best player in the league in Rory Neal, like I said, and great pieces to build around with who they will be building around come training camp. But as for the Pembina Valley Twisters, this is a team that's losing players like Brett Bergman, Cody Clark, Merrick DeGrave, Riley Gertson, as well as Derek Weeb up front, their captain, and Jacob Carrolls, Kyle Van Dynes, and Kalen Russell. So losing a lot of top-end quality. They have good young talent coming back, though, and Alex Van Dynes up front, Slade Sutherland, who finished second on the team in points in the playoffs, and Mike Hepner on the back end, who led the D-core in scoring in the regular season and in the playoffs as well. They're still going to have the same tandem projected to come back in Logan Enns and Owen Larocque. And even though, Noah Gilbert, I've been singing his praises about him being the greatest goaltender of all time in this league, solidifying that, as well as, just being the best goaltender in the league. This team has the best tandem in the mmjhl, and it's not often where you can go to 2 number 1 goalies in the playoffs like Braden Biernaerts did so often in the postseason. Wish I asked him about that and the philosophy of doing it, but I feel like it's like the Boston Bruins with the Jeremy Swayman and Linus Allmark effect, right? You have 2 number 1 goaltenders. Why not roll with one of them and give them or the other one an off game, right, in the playoffs to keep them fresh. I'll be interested to see if they do that again next season. If this goaltending tandem stays together, look for them to split the games next year. But as for this team, you're losing your top three scorers. It's a tough go, along with a difference maker on the back end and Cal Van Dynes. It's going to be interesting to see what this team does in training camp and how they fill the holes that of this roster that need to be filled. But no doubt you're going to need more from some of your returning players, and you're going to need players like Alex Van Dyne, Slade Southern to continue to step up next season, as you are losing some pretty big pieces, like I said, in Merrick DeGrave and Derek Weeb, especially Riley Gertzen, Red Bergman, like Cody Clark, all these guys, difference makers that, Pembina Valley going to be definitely relying on that young core this season to continue to build next season the positive steps in the right direction. When you have the best goaltending tandem in the league, though, and you can go to one of those guys at any point, and if you're able to continue to play good defensive hockey, I think the Twisters are in for another pretty successful season again next year. Maybe not a second place team at this point, but that could very well change with any new additions that they have in. And who knows, come preseason, they might be looking like they're a really dangerous hockey team heading into next year. Let's roll to the St. Boniface Riels. They're losing Nate Hines, Aaron Nielsen, Sam Alsip, Nate Zablosian, and Ashton Haworth. Now, for this Riels team, first Final Four since 14-15, when they went on to win their only championship in franchise history, or post 2000s era, as I should say. They're losing key players but retaining great talent. They're losing 12 goal scorers in terms of two players that can put up 12 goals in Nate Hines and Nielsen. And Sam Alsop was a player that put up some good offense this year too, right? But the players coming back for themselves, their captain, it starts with them, or it starts with him and Connor Davis, who brings so much speed and skill to his game. Nathan Brzezinski, lanky forward that is skilled with the puck. And Ty McNaughton was a great addition for Zach Franco in this club at the trade deadline. He finished second on the team in playoff points and had 14 points in 10 games played since he was acquired at the deadline. They made the move from 8th to 3rd from 2023-2020 or 2022-2023 to this season 2023-2024. Zach Franco made aggressive moves and great moves, calculated moves to bring in difference makers like Nielsen and Haworth. I think that securing your goaltender is going to be really important for next season, and that begs the question, since Michael O'Sullivan was a loan to the Twins from the Riels. Will they be getting him back? If they do, the Riels are really set in net. I think one part of their team that might get overlooked, I do think they have a lot of skill throughout the lineup, but it's a team that only scored the ninth most goals in the league this season. So going to be interesting to see what type of offensive talent they could be getting at camp. They're going to have some spots to, of course, replace with Hines, Nielsen, and Alsop going aging out of the league. And those were three players that, especially Hines and Nielsen, that were true difference makers for St. Boniface down the stretch. What does Franco find in the offseason and throughout next season from players that they could acquire to the team that aren't already on it, or from the players within? It's going to be exciting to find out what happens in St. Boniface. I think they're in a great position and could very well be championship contenders when we start up talking about the 2024-2025 season on season 2 of the mmjhl podcast. But into these Charleswood Hawks, and man, this is a team that I think is absolutely loaded heading into next season. It was a team that also at one point was second in the league, but ended up faltering. They had a skid in the season, a stretch of games where it wasn't going so well for them on a long losing streak. They played stronger as the season came to an end. An absolute battle in round 1 against the St. Vital Junior Victorias, and even though they were really banged up, they were able to pull through. Didn't have enough quite to beat the St. James Junior Canucks, but back-to-back Final Four finishes for this Charleswood Hawks program, the most decorated in mmjhl history with the amount of championships they've won. The last team to three-peat, of course, since well, most recent team, St. James, doing it. They were the latest team to do it since it was accomplished recently. But they're not losing much at all. Only Ben Zander and Ian McDonnell, two reliable players for them. Ben Zander, such a great offensive talent. But look, you know, even though they get swept against St. James, they make it through St. Vital, who was, I'd say, healthier than they were, even though St. Vital was dealing with their own injury problems. But down the stretch, this Hawks team, their health was the issue with them, a big one, I'd say, that helped contribute to their demise against the St. James Unit Canucks. The series could have been closer. I still think St. James wins it, but if this team is loaded and healthy again next season, come postseason time, they are a championship caliber team. You got Rylan Hugin, Logan Dennis, and Matt Carlson that are all going to be back. They missed time in the playoffs, running into that loaded Canucks squad. Like, this is a Hawks team that finished with the fourth most goals for in the mmjhl and gave up the fourth least goals against. No Jason Ruff on the back end was huge in the playoffs for this team. I wonder if he comes back next season. I heard a rumor that I can't confirm, so I'm not going to say it here on the show, but take a look at this team. They'll have another year together. They'll be a year older, and they have some of the best players in the league already. When you talk about a guy like Rylan Hugin, Nicholas Guberman was absolutely sensational in the playoffs with him being back. I really do like the odds of this Hawks team next season. I thought that Zach Meadows and Jared Rossi both showed signs of strong play, and Will Kinsman with another year with this group, if he does come back with that coaching staff, Charleswood, they can score, they can defend well, they can beat you in so many ways when they're on the top of their game. Look for this team, if they can get more consistency next season, to stay not only in the top four, but be a top three team in the regular season. That is what my thoughts on Charleswood are. But as for the St. Vital Junior Victorias, they're going to be losing Jack Kaiser, David Koga, as well as Denny Gagnon, their captain, and Reese Malmus. Even though this team is losing some big pieces, Kaiser scored some huge goals for them. Koga was a huge addition for them at the trade deadline, replacing the likes of Pace and Butler, and doing a pretty good job of doing so. Even though they are losing their captain and a pretty steady defenseman, good skating defenseman in Reese Malmus, you're going to have the second best player in the league, in my opinion, in Tyler Rubini coming back next season. The same with players in Ryland Netchwaduk and Brady Jaquette being really good for them coming back. Alessandro Imbrogno, a good bottom six player for them, and arguably their hardest worker. I'd say he was. Reese White, a good defenseman too. Those five that I just named are all set to age out coming up next season. You got three of their top five players in that list, in Rubini, Netchwaduk, and Jaquette. So yeah, when players are in their last year, I feel like they're in for huge years if they've been really good before, and these three have been really good before. Lucas Gillison is going to be coming back too. He's one of the most skilled players in the league with the puck, so he's going to be a fantastic addition for them to retain. And the Anderson brothers, Aiden Anderson rarely played down the stretch. They can get him more in the lineup next season. This only makes them deeper. Nolan was a very smart, high IQ player with the puck. It's a good forward group overall. They're losing two top five scorers. Sure, in the goal category with Kaiser and Koga, you're losing two great D-men. I'd say that with Denny Gagnon, with him being the captain and him aging out, I'd say Rubini, Netchwaduk, and or Jaquette are in line for the captaincy. The big question for this team is going to be the D-zone play and the goaltending next season. Mason Tebek was their starter. He only had an 8.92 save percentage, and this has kind of been the story, the trend with St. Vital, right? They got pretty good team in front, but the goaltending to me is always a question. Defensively, this team, there was a lot of puck management problems this season at times, and a lot of lapses in their play. A lot of times, too, where this team would get caught deep, as a unit more so, in the other end, and there'd be rush goals going on. So, with Tyler Anderson, him being first year of head coach, hopefully he makes the adjustments for a team that's going to be very talented, ride the second best player in the league in Rubini, and be sure to have good support around him. And yeah, in terms of Saint Fatal, I think that they got some really good young guys that show good that could be plugged into the lineup potentially next year. And Jordan now on the back end, as well as a player in Dylan Jaquette, who I mistaken for Aiden Anderson at one point in the playoffs. But look for Saint Fatal, I think, again, to be a problem for teams in the league. I think they finish no worse than top 5 this season coming up in 2024-2025. On to the Fort Garry Twins, losing Ethan Gibson as well as Sloan Tremblay, most likely losing O'Sullivan since he was alone. I don't know what the scenario would be for them to keep him, but overall, like, it would be huge if they get O'Sullivan back. But if this team can find the right goaltending, they have a really talented squad, man. Ethan Johnson was such a huge addition from that River East Royal Knights team. And you look at the returning players as well, along with Johnson that'll be back, most notably in Gorchinski, Matani on the back end, Halamandaris, Balshaw, Gilberto, Tazio Cienflone, who I was really impressed with in the playoffs. He did so many good things. The question is, and there's 2 of them, will Scott Wong and his coaching staff be back? Because we've seen so many coaches have 1-year stints with this Fort Garry Twins team, and then they're on to a new coach. So I'll be interested to see if he'll be back next season, as well as can he get this group to buy in. I've heard so many stories from a reliable source within the Twins organization that this team sometimes would have to cancel practices frequently because players wouldn't make the commitment to show up. They might have been committed to other things like work. And at the end of the day, it's still a junior hockey team, and you need that commitment and buy-in from the players. I feel like when Fort Garry was starting to get that, from what I've heard, the end of the season, that's why they went on such a huge run. This team was near the top of the league in offensive output this year. I believe they might have finished 3rd in goals for. This is a team with a lot of potential, I think, to do really good. You get the right goaltender in here, and you add a few more pieces to this squad. I think that Fort Garry, if they're coached the right way too, if their group can buy in, this is a team that I think could make a lot of noise next season. Watch out for them. They ended the season really strong, and expect for this group to show signs of excellence again next year. As for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, they're losing Klippenstein, Lashiavo, Oleksiak, Thiessen up front, Dadano, and Kupchak on the back end. But yeah, Goodbranson's going to be returning. He was their leading point getter this year. They're losing 2 top 3 scorers in Lashiavo and Oleksiak. This team gave up 35 shots per game this season, only put up 28. So how do they get to limiting more shots against next season is going to be a huge thing. They got a great goaltender in Owen Savoy, and trading for Krekowitz is a piece that I think is huge for them to get, and I talked about how huge it was. I think that it was massive, especially heading into 2024-2025 year, where the Raiders are going to be looking to stay in the playoff hunt, in the playoff race. A team that finished 7th, that has some good returning talent coming back, but definitely losing some really good players to them, aging out. Look for the Raiders to, I'd say, be outside of the top 4 again, unless they go out and acquire some absolute studs. You never know what could happen. But a team that missed the playoffs in 2022-2023 was back in it in 2023-2024 this season, and gave Pembina Valley, honestly, a lot of good tests, a lot of good battles, some good 1-goal games in there that they ultimately lost. But the Raiders should be proud of how they finished their season this year, looking to get back into the playoffs and improve on their 7th place finish last season. As for the Transcon Railer Express, this is the team I'm most interested to see where they go next year. They're only losing one player projected right now out of their returning players for next year in Ronan White, their team captain and their best defenseman. But this team is a team that, was higher up in the standings at one point in the year compared to their 8th place finish. It was a team that was one of the best in the league at outshooting teams compared to the shots that they would give up. Derek Gagnon is a really good coach. This Transcon Railer Express team has been contenders in the past few years before this one, especially in 2021, 2022. I'd say that was kind of their year. They had Dylan Arnold in net, a really great forward group, a good defensive core. Their forward group was mainly led by Connor Grunston, and now they're at the point where they're this younger team, right? Players on their squad this season, when we take a look at it, just looking at the player stats, like Colton Paku, Nolan Vandenbush, right? Nathan Turner, Evan Chudley. They were some good players for them this season. Austin Campbell showed he could put the puck in the net in the postseason. Kason Matejchuk as well from the defensive side, both of those players. So they'll be back. A huge thing for them is, yeah, their goaltending, I'd say, was weak. It's not where it once was back when we're talking about 2021, 2022. So it's going to be interesting where they go there next season. Josh Rock and Connor Stewart both have another year or 2 more years in this league to go. So it's going to be interesting to see if Derek Gagnon sticks with them or if they look for something else come tryouts. But this is a team, they're young. They went through ups and downs this season. Even though they got swept against St. James, they had experience of knowing what it's like to be in games with the number 1 team in the league that went on to three-peat, of course. So, yeah, expect for Transcone to build off of this year. And I could see them putting together a more well-sustained season next year and working their way up in the standings. We'll just have to wait and see for what happens there. But 2 more teams to talk about, the Stonewall Jets. This team, all their players are going to be returning, and they got some great ones. Peyton Bateman, 75 goals. Carson King, or 75 points for Bateman, 30 goals for King. Cohen Chang, he's a good power forward for this team. Cole Emberley as well, a pretty good player in his own right, wearing number 17. You look at the back end for this team. They went out and acquired a Kai Parker right at the trade deadline, and if you take a look, I'd say that, it's going to be really crucial for them next year to get off to a great start. They got off to a bad one this year, and they only miss out by just a bit in terms of making the playoffs. Pat Power, if he's back next season, will have a year under his belt with this group, and this is a team that, of course, will be looking to play a better brand of defensive hockey next year, look to get even more goal scoring next year as they finish with 157 goals and 184 goals against. And finally, into the River East Royal Knights, a team that were the biggest sellers at this year's trade deadline. A team that traded away arguably the most talented goaltender, or one of the most talented goaltenders in the league, in Ashton Haworth, and their most skilled forward in Aaron Nielsen, who had 68 points the year before. Something around that. But yeah, this is a team that they're projected to have all these guys coming back on their roster. Training camp should be very interesting for them. They finished second the season before this one and went back to missing the postseason. They're going to have some players back that took the next step a bit last year. Graham Maslow went over 30 points with 32. Kalen Reynolds also had 32 points in 45 games played. Maslow had 3 games less play than him. Manny Minnick Jr. is a bright spot on this roster coming back, as well as a guy in Cole Winkler on the back end. But Minnick Jr., he was asked to do a lot of points last season, played in the majority of the games compared to Ashton Haworth, actually, before he got traded. Jesse Morris, former Riel. We'll see how himself and Manny Minnick Jr. split the goal next season. But if I'm going to be honest, River East, unless one of these players turns into one, or if they find a game breaker, I don't see many game breakers on this team. Maybe it's going to be a true score by committee. And Manny Minnick Jr. and Jesse Morris have fantastic seasons in the goal to get them to the playoffs. But yeah, I'm sorry, Barry Bonnie and company, but in my opinion, right now, this could change come the start of season 2, or near the start of the season 2, when I make my 2024-2025 predictions officially. Right now, if I were to make them, I would not have River East in the playoffs. For me, they'd be, compared to the rest of the league and how they stack up with those teams, I'd say that the River East Royal Knights would be one of the teams, one of the two teams that have to miss that I do have missing. But a lot could change, training camp. There could be absolute studs that come on to these teams, right? A lot could change in the junior hockey landscape, especially in the mmjhl. You never know. But what I do know is next season should be fantastic, and we're going to close off what was a really entertaining, really fun podcast to do here for season 1 of the mmjhl podcast, coming up next after this transition in an episode brought to you by McCann Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders. Well, you made it to the end of season 1's finale of the mmjhl podcast. I've been your host, Graham the G Show Forsyth. It's been a lot of fun being able to come on and do this podcast for the 18 we did this year. We're planning to do way more episodes next year to make it more consistent. This year was kind of juggling through all the ups and downs of not ups and downs, but trying to schedule around the busy schedule that we had with live streaming playoff games. It's going to be more direct next season, more simple. We're going to simplify it to the point where we can actually run podcasts consistently while we're in playoff time, right, for the mmjhl as well as the mfhl. But yeah, what a year it was doing coverage on the mmjhl. This was a fantastic league to cover this year. I had so much fun, and I can't thank you, the viewer, enough for tuning in and making it all possible. We're going to be back again next season. We're partnering again with the mmjhl for 2024-2025. So if you want to stay up to date, we're going to be bringing the podcast back. We're also going to be live streaming games here again for free in the league. We're thinking about 72 at least projected next year to live stream. So we're excited. We hope you are too. And if you want to stay up to date with everything mmjhl hockey coverage here on the G Show Productions YouTube channel, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future uploads of a podcast like this or one of our live stream games. We did over 20 live streams this year in terms of our broadcast, 4 games. Those were a lot of fun. Happy we got them figured out, and happy that the players and coaches in the league were happy to talk to us too. Special thanks to Braden Biernartz and Noah Gilbert for coming on the podcast for this season 1 finale. It really means a lot. Thank you to, once again, McCann Fasteners and Tools, your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs, for sponsoring this edition of the podcast. To Terrico, serving Manitoba producers in the agricultural industry for over 80 years. And to Goaltenders, your goalie's personal video review service, for, of course, supporting Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League coverage here on G Show Productions, as well as supporting us here on gshow.ca. We're going to be back next season with an all new improved podcast in terms of, I'm talking better graphics, more players and coaches interviews, more consistently. Rarely, or I hope no times you'll see me solo here on this podcast, just talking to myself basically and talking to you guys. But we're gonna have, in terms of the live broadcast, we're hoping to have play-by-play and color commentators, so 2 at a time. We're implementing a 4 or 5K camera as well, so we get more crisp angles in the games, better layouts on our podcast, more playful graphics, and just, it's going to be a amazing experience, analysis in there in terms of the games at a higher level, making things more clear. And yeah, a lot is in the works. Stay tuned. In September, we'll be announcing our full broadcast plan and how everything's going to shape out here on gshow.ca for 2024-2025. But what a season it was in the mmjhl. The St. James Junior Canucks becoming the first team since the 2011-2012 Charleswood Hawks to three-peat in the league. Tyrone Woolen, Brady Whiteley, Cale Price, Noah Gilbert, Matthew Mason, Bandel, Borthistle, and as well as Chase Sobey, all ending their careers with championships. The O2s that have been there from 2021 to 22 up until now, completing the true three-peat for themselves, becoming a dynasty, cementing themselves as that in MMJHL history. The Twisters looking to get back to the finals next season and looking to knock them off, or whoever else they face in the championship series, as all other teams outside of those two out of the 10 will be looking to improve on their seasons and get to the point where the Twisters and Canucks got this year, which was in the championship series competing for the Jack McKenzie Trophy. I've been your host of the MMJHL podcast, Graham the G Show Forsyth, giving you the salute, peace out, and waving so long for one final time here. We'll see you all coming up in, I'd say, probably the first week of September for season 2 of the official Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League podcast. Take care, everybody. So long. Enjoy the off season. We'll see you back here just before the fall starts for more MMJHL action here on gshow.ca, on G Show Productions on YouTube.